Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today for our March 20th Monterey and Salinas combined Shotski Memorial Service for the month of March. I hope all of you are doing well, and I appreciate your tuning in and joining us today. I'd like to begin with a short reading. If you please join me in Gasho. Kokoro oba ikanaru mono to shiran demo domo na o tonaeru ba hotoke ni zo naru. Though not knowing the mind as what it is, just say the name and you become Buddha. Nam mandavas, nam mandavas, nam mandavas, nam mandavas, nam mandavas, nam mandavas. Thank you. Now I'd like to begin the sutra chanting of the Sambujo. This will be followed by the Hyobyakumon, the dedication reading, and then the chanting of the Sambutsuge and the Jusege. And during that time, you'll see the names of families observing memorial in the month of March scrolling across your screen. Today, on this occasion of the Salinas and Monterey March Shotsuki Hoyo service, the members of the Sangha have reverently come before Amida Buddha in memory of their beloved family members. With deepest reverence and thankfulness for the all-embracing wisdom and compassion of Amida, we reaffirm the three homages. I go to the Buddha for guidance. I go to the Dharma for guidance. I go to the Sangha for guidance. Namo Kia Boots, Namo Kia Ho, Namo Kia So, Nam Mandavas, Nam Mandavas, Nam Mandavas, Nam Mandavas. Murya Jingyo Gogengigi Ijin Ngoknyase Enmyo Murya Tosha Nichigatsumani Shuko Enyo Aishitsu Onpe Yunyaku Jemoku Nyorai Yogen Chose Murin Shongaku Naion Koru Jepo Kaimon Shojin Sanmai Chie Itokumuryo Shushoke Jintai Zennen Shobutsu Honkai Gujin Jin no Kungongai Tai Mumya Yogunu Seson Yamu Ninno Shishi Jintokumuryo Kukun Kodai Chie Jinmyo Komyo Iso Shindo Daisen Ganga Sabutsu Zaisho Ho Gado Shoji Mipu Genatsu Fusenjo I Kainin Shojin Nyoze Sanmai Chie Ijo Gose Tokubutsu Pugyo Shigan Isai Kuku Isa Dayan Keshi Ubutsu Yakusen Nokuman Muryo Daisho Shunyong Onya Kuyo Isai Shito Shobutsu Punyong no Kensho Bunyaku Inyong Onya Shobu Sengai Bufu Kange Mushu Setsu no 上変死小国女税小人異人難量量が差物国の内一五種奇妙道場超絶国女内四二無闘争がと愛面ドーナツ一切十法来所心熱症状糸が国けなく安穏古部信用税が心象発願の非力少々よ十法生存知恵無下上領子孫知が信行軽量心死食毒中悪行精進忍辱福敬我言上世願意志無常道志願不満足性不上昇学が無量化不意大世衆不採小弁具性不上昇学が至上仏の妙所長十法苦行一生門性不上昇学利欲人少年上へ修凡よ死具無常道一生天人死人力現代語不詳無才道少女三具名交際集約難回避知恵現名死根の案永息小悪道通達全宗門高僧上満足清ら十法日月修十期天候音符現二種解放像公正空読法上内集中説法四式空有一切仏具即修徳本元年出上満徳位三害よ成仏無下地通達未部所願学へ利投資最小尊志願若果大聖の感動国小天人道人妙見ナマンダブナマンダブナマンダブナマンダブナマンダブナマンダブ観にしぐど平等聖祭道発菩提心お嬢安楽公ナンマンダブスナンマンダブスナンマンダブスナンマンダブスナンマンダブスナンマンダブス Thank you very much. Now I'd like to ask you all to follow along with the Gatha Nori no Miyama. Thank you. That is Nori no Miyama, or Dharma Mountain. Now I'd like to share the English translation with you. Please join me in Gasho. Cherry blossoms on the Dharma Mountain spread their fragrance as of old. Cease marking traces on the noble path and perceive the springtime splendor of Bodhi we assume was beyond our reach. Nightingales on the Dharma Mountain sing the praises of the name as of old. Listen to their voices warning us that this life is but a dream and the night is very short. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. Thank you. Once again, good morning, everyone. I'd like to begin my talk this morning by sharing with you a short reading. If you please join me in Gasho. Saichi has nothing, which is joy. Outside this, there is nothing, both good and evil. All is taken away. Nothing is left. To have nothing, this is the release, this is the peace. All is taken away by the Namo Amida Butsu. This is truly the peace. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. Thank you. So we find ourselves already in the month of March. And as you know, March is the time that we observe Ohigan in our temples. And Ohigan literally means the other shore of enlightenment. And it is during this time that traditionally we are reminded to reflect on our lives, to reflect on the harmony that exists in nature, to work towards, the paramitas they're called, or the 6 paramitas of selfless sharing and others. And these practices or these paramitas are what brings to our life harmony and peace. These are very difficult to practice, as we all know. And so we're reminded that we are also the recipients of these paramitas. So as Ohigan is traditionally a time to reflect, it's time to reflect on what we are receiving as Jodo Shinshu Buddhists. This is especially important now in our life, when there are so many challenges every day. The gas prices are going skyrocketing, inflation is rising, the cost at the supermarket has been rising, and the world has become more complex. We see wars in Ukraine. So this poem that I started with was written by a man named Asahara Saichi. He was born in 1850 and he died in 1932. And Saichi was a very simple man who, I believe he started his life as a seaman of some sort. But then he later became a geta maker. Getas are these wooden sandals or clogs that are used in Japan. And this man Saichi was a person of great spiritual insight. And in Japan, and in the tradition of Jodo Shinshu Buddhism, he's known as a Myokonin. And Saichi would sit down making these geta, whittling the wood to make geta, or these sandals. And he would take the shavings from these sandals and he would write poems on them. And he did this daily. And as these shavings and poems accumulated, he began taking them and transposing them into a little school notebook. Now, it's estimated that he wrote over 6,000 poems. Unfortunately, Some of these poems were lost during the air raids over Tokyo during World War II and the fires that burned many, many homes. And so a good number of Saichi's poems were lost in those fires. So here in this one poem, though, that I started with, Saichi, he reflects on a couple of things, I believe. One is the material possessions that we gather, but also this very life that we've been given as a result of everybody and everything around us. So by relief of self and Amida's into Amida's power of the vow, he says everything is taken away. And this is true release. This is true peace, he says. So good and bad, everything is taken away. And this is really profound, I think, of Saichi, that nothing is left. Everything is, he's relying on Amida for everything. So later, he contemplates on his life, and he begins to see himself, or begins to see the worst in himself. And so one other poem I want to share with you. Saichi says, numberless the ranks of evil men, yet of all the people in the world, my heart is the worst of all. Though I may not have actually said it in words, in my heart I wished my father dead. I wonder why he didn't die. It's amazing the earth hasn't yet cracked open under me, despite such evil thoughts. This mass of monstrously evil karma. Okay? So when I saw this poem, I thought, wow, the tone of this poem is so very, very honest and sorrowful at the same time. So Saichi, in his effort to practice Namo Amida Butsu with a singleness of mind, he realized that he failed to realize that his desires to see his father dead stained and tarnished him. Until that moment, then, his reliance on self, his reliance on self-power, had confined him to the ignorance of an ego-centered world of subjective discrimination. And he had remained unaware of his own profound guilt. When he became aware of it, that's when he wrote this poem. He realized without the light and the life of Amida Buddha that pierces through all that covering of ignorance and greed and anger, he could never realize that he was indeed, as he says, this mass of monstrously evil karma. I like Saichi because of his honesty and his profound insight into human nature. And the human nature of human beings is to first satisfy and benefit our own basic needs. You know, we protect our property, our careers, our lifestyle, our hobbies, and more so we protect this self. Our self-serving egos that loom very large, and because of that, we're all in danger of becoming this monstrously evil karmic person. We're all in danger of becoming uncaring, inconsiderate, mean, and even hateful. We see this unfolding in the war in Europe. We see it unfolding on the streets of our cities. Our desires loom deep within ourselves and can emerge even during times where it seems so wonderful, and yet anger and greed and ignorance blows up, manifests itself. So Shinran tells us to look deep deep, deep, into the deepest reaches of our hearts and minds, and see that the self and the ego motivates all that we do. There's really no end to our wicked thoughts and actions. But we receive, now this is an important part, is that despite that, we receive great wisdom and compassion, just as we are. So Saichi's encounter with self brought him to a realization, to realize his mass of monstrously evil karma. And in Jodo Shinshu Buddhism, this is the realization of the evil person who entrusts himself to this other power. Shinran talks about this in the Tani Show. A term which implies a turning away from the self-centered performance of good, replacing it with complete dependence on what's called the other power of Amida Buddha. And so once more, Saichi says, in other power, there is no self-power, no other power. All is other power. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. This is Saichi's understanding, which is, to me, so profound and so deep. So a simple man who makes gettas saw this wonderful power of the vow of Namo Amida Butsu. And I believe clearly that in the world today in which we live, clearly the world today needs the teachings of someone like Saichi, clearly needs the teachings of Shinran and Namo Amida Butsu. Thank you very much for listening. Please now join me in Gassho as I read to you the Nenyo Shonin's Gobun Sho. Shonin Nichi Ryu no Gokanke no Onomuki wa Shinjin no Motte Honto Serare Sono Sono Yue wa Moro Moro no Zogyo Nage Sutete Isshin ni Midani Kimyo Suremo Fugashigi no Ganriki to Shite Bun no kata yori ojo wa jijo sashimeta mo Sono kurai o ichinen boki nyu shoujo shiju tomo shaku shi Sono ue no shomyo nenbuta Narai waga ojo sadame tamai shi Gonho jin no nenbuto Kokoro mekinari Anakashiko Anakashiko Namandavas 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 Namandavas. Shinran Shonin taught that the essence of Jodo Shinshu is Shinjing. The reason is that by abandoning all other practices and completely entrusting ourselves in Amida Buddha, our spiritual rebirth is assured by Amida through the inconceivable power of the primal vow. This is known as entering the ranks of the truly assured at the very moment of Shinjing. Thereafter, all utterances of the Nembutsu should be understood only as expressions of gratitude for Amida's assurance of our spiritual rebirth. With reverence, I remain. Namandavas, 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 Namandavas. Thank you very much. Before we close, I want to make a few announcements about upcoming services. I'm happy to announce that next month we'll begin to have in-person services at our temples in Salinas, Monterey, and Watsonville. On April 3rd will be Watsonville's Hanamatsuri service. This is the service commemorating the birth of Shakyamuni Buddha. Our special guest speaker will be Reverend Jerry Hirano of the Salt Lake Buddhist Temple. On that same day, regular services will be conducted in Monterey and Salinas. Please see your local temple website and newsletters for dates and times of all upcoming services. And an added note that on April 10th, Monterey will observe Hanamatsuri with Reverend Dean Koyama of Palo Alto as the guest speaker, and Salinas will celebrate Hanamatsuri on April 17th with Reverend Kodo Umezu as the guest speaker. And both these services and all services in April will be live services with in-person, so you're invited to attend those. And I want to add one last announcement. Please mark your calendars for April 16th. Watsonville will be holding a Hanamatsuri fundraiser with takeout bento boxes. Contact the Watsonville Buddhist Temple to pre-order those bento lunches, and order deadline is going to be April 4th, and this is pre-orders only. Okay? And now I'd like to ask you to follow along to the Gatha Ondok-san 1. Ondok-san. The debt of gratitude I owe to Amida's great compassion, I will proclaim until my life disintegrates into dust. The debt of gratitude I owe to my Dharma teachers, I will express until my bodily form is finally shattered. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. Thank you very much, everyone. This will conclude our services today for Monterey and Salinas, and I hope you'll join us next week for a regular Sunday service for all three temples. That'll be on the 27th, and we hope to see you then. Until then, please be well and take care. Thank you very much. Nam Mandavas Nam Mandavas Nam Mandavas.